Chuck Norris stood third in line at Medway Pharmacy. The chairs along the wall were filled with tired backs and slow limbs. The kind of crowd that knew the difference between real pain and inconvenience. It was Wednesday, 2:15 p.m. That meant two things. Social Security refill day. Trouble was likely. There were 7 people ahead of him. One woman clutched her prescription slip like it might dissolve. A man near the back wore compression socks and a face of quiet suffering. Chuck watched. Not impatient. Just observant. The air smelled like antiseptic and boiled coffee. Soft jazz trickled from a speaker above the counter like a dentist's idea of mercy. Behind the counter stood a girl named Danielle, early 20s, flustered, polite. Her pharmacy coat looked 2 sizes too big, and her eyes had the quiet desperation of someone who'd worked a double. Next to her stood a tall man in a corporate polo, arms crossed, watching her work without lifting a finger. His name tag read, Pharmacy Supervisor Ellis. Chuck noticed he never smiled. A voice called out from the chairs. "I've been here since 11:40. Ellis glanced up. "We're working as fast as we can, ma'am." The woman stood. Elderly, fragile, a folded walker in her grip. "I just need my insulin." "You told me 30 minutes. Ellis didn't look up this time. Danielle did. "I remember. I'll check on it now." But Ellis raised a hand without turning. "Danielle, stay on the register." "But..." "I said stay." Danielle hesitated, then nodded. The woman sat again. Not defeated, just used to it. Chuck shifted his weight. The linoleum creaked. 5 minutes later, Ellis stepped into the back briefly. Danielle leaned toward the old woman. "I'll check it now, okay?" she whispered. Chuck saw it. Saw the kindness. Saw the fear. Danielle returned, a paper bag in hand. She handed it over with both palms, like it mattered. It did. The woman's hands shook. "Thank you, sweetheart." Danielle smiled and said something soft. The woman didn't hear, but smiled anyway. Chuck nodded to himself. That's when the yelling started. A man stormed through the automatic doors like he'd been wronged by the earth itself. Late 30s. Cargo vest. Unshaven. Loud. He cut past the line, slammed his hand on the counter. "I'm here for my oxy. Been waiting 3 days." Danielle flinched. "Sir, I'll need to see." "I ain't waiting in no line." Ellis returned. "What's the issue?" "This girl's stalling." I called ahead. Chuck took 1 step forward. Danielle tried to calm him. "We just need ID in." "Look, I'm sick of this." The man reached across the counter and grabbed the bag Danielle had just filled for the next patient. Chuck blinked once. Then moved. The bag never made it past the counter. Chuck's hand closed around the man's wrist, not yanking, not twisting. Just stopping. The man looked down. Then up. Chuck's face was stone. "No," he said. The man pulled, but the grip didn't move. "You got no right. You cut in line. You raised your voice. You touched someone else's medication." Chuck's voice was quiet, but clear. The man tried again. Chuck let go. The man stumbled backward and hit the waiting bench with a thud. Chuck turned to Danielle. "Continue, please." She nodded. Ellis looked at Chuck. "You can't touch people in here." "I'll call security." Chuck stepped closer. "Do." "I will." "I'll wait." Ellis stared at him. "You're not in charge here." Chuck looked around. The room had gone still. He looked back at Ellis. "No. But I know what it looks like when the wrong people are." Danielle bit her lip to hide a smile. Chuck turned back to the counter and stepped forward. "Ticket number 47, he said, laying his slip down. "Right on time." Chuck didn't sit down. He didn't move to the side. He stood there, quietly, hands behind his back. Ellis typed something hard into the terminal with 2 fingers, like the keyboard had wronged him. His jaw worked as he scanned Chuck's prescription, then hit print with the kind of force reserved for vending machines and tired egos. Danielle bagged the order gently. "It'll be just a moment, sir." Chuck nodded once. Behind him, the waiting room had taken on a strange calm. People leaned in, eyes lingering on him. The man who'd tried to steal the meds earlier now sat silently, rubbing his wrist and avoiding eye contact. No one said Chuck's name. But they knew. Somehow, they knew. Ellis leaned over the counter. "I don't care who you are," he said under his breath. "You think that little display back there makes you some kind of hero?" Chuck didn't blink. "Not a hero," he said. "Just allergic to cowards." Ellis chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You think these people are your fan club? This is a pharmacy. I run it." Chuck looked past him to Danielle. "That true?" She paused. The pause was long enough to be an answer. Chuck turned back. "I didn't think so." Ellis leaned back, now defensive. "You ever managed a place like this? Dealt with addicts? Angry seniors? Corporate quotas? Short staff and no overtime? It's war. You either control the room, or you get steamrolled." Chuck spoke slowly. "I've been in real wars." Ellis scoffed. Chuck continued. "The kind where people bleed for strangers. Where medics get 10 seconds to save a life. Where fear's not an excuse to mistreat people, it's a reminder to serve them faster. You think that gives you the right to?" "No," Chuck said. "But it gives me perspective. And maybe, a little patience." Danielle returned with the bag, quietly setting it on the counter. "Ready for pickup." Chuck handed her a bill and looked her in the eye. "You did good today." She blinked, caught off guard. "Thank you." Ellis snatched the payment and dropped the receipt on the counter like a dead leaf. Chuck took the bag and turned to leave. Before he crossed the threshold, he looked back. "To lead people," he said to Ellis, "you have to serve them first." Then he walked out, letting the doors part around him like water around a stone. Later that week, Medway Pharmacy had a surprise inspection. Not internal. External. A state board representative. Unscheduled. Unsmiling. Danielle wasn't the one who filed the report. But someone did. And it came with photos. Time-stamped footage. Audio clips. Eyewitness statements. And one handwritten letter, anonymous but clear. When someone uses their title to harm people instead of help them, the question isn't who can fix it. The question is, who will? Ellis didn't last the week. 2 months later, Danielle stood behind the same counter, except this time, her name tag read Pharmacy Manager. She treated every customer with kindness, fairness, strength. The customers noticed. And one old man, who never gave his name, showed up on the 15th of each month. He never said much. But she always made sure he got the freshest bottle of aspirin in stock. The pharmacy changed after Ellis was gone. It didn't happen overnight. Corporate policies didn't suddenly become humane. The paperwork didn't get shorter. The lines didn't vanish. But the temperature in the room shifted. People started arriving a little earlier, knowing the chairs were no longer filled with sighs and suspicion. Danielle greeted everyone by name. She kept a jar of hard candies on the counter, and if someone looked like they'd had a hard morning, she offered too. "You didn't have to do that," one woman told her. Danielle smiled. "Neither did you. But here we are." Chuck came by once a month like clockwork. He didn't wait for someone to ask how he was, he simply moved with quiet purpose. He'd pick up his order, nod to Danielle, maybe leave a folded tip for the delivery kid who couldn't break 20s. He never lingered. Until one day he did. It was a Monday in late September. The air had turned sharp and honest. Jackets came out of closets, and knees started aching before breakfast. Chuck stepped through the sliding doors right as a small commotion unfolded at the counter. A man in his late 70s, sharp coat, oxygen tank, cane in one hand, was arguing with a clerk. His voice was low, but strained. "I'm telling you, they said it would be here today." The new clerk, young, trying, overwhelmed, shook his head. "The shipment came in, sir, but your prescription wasn't on the manifest." "I'm really sorry." "You don't understand," the man said. "I've got 3 days left. After that, I can't breathe without it." The boy stammered, "We can overnight it. Should be here in 48 hours. The man's hand gripped the counter to steady himself. "I might not have 48 hours. The room went quiet. Then Chuck spoke. "His name is Fred Barlow. Former welder. He served on a Navy repair ship in the Pacific. And he's been coming here every third Monday since the place opened." Everyone turned. Fred blinked. "Do I know you?" Chuck stepped forward. "We sat together at the Legion breakfast 3 years ago. You told me your wife used to bake cornbread so soft, it could be eaten with a spoon." Fred squinted. Then smiled, slow and wide. "I remember now. You're the fella who barely touched his eggs." Chuck nodded. "Didn't trust the cook." Danielle appeared behind the counter. "Everything all right?" Chuck turned to her. "Fred's inhaler didn't come in." Her face changed. She looked to the clerk. "You checked the priority box?" He blinked. "I didn't know we had one." She was already moving. Into the back. Through the side hallway. A slam of a storage cabinet. 2 minutes later, she returned. Holding the box. "I thought it looked thin," she said, pulling out a small white and blue package. Fred nearly dropped his cane. Danielle gently placed it in his hand. "On the house," she said. "We'll fix it in the system later." He looked at her, then Chuck. Then quietly, he began to cry. Not loudly. Just a slow stream of grateful salt and memory. Chuck rested a hand on his shoulder. "It's all right." Fred whispered, "I thought maybe the world forgot me." Chuck shook his head. "The world forgets a lot of things. I don't." That evening, Danielle refilled the candy jar and noticed something new on the counter, a crisp envelope with her name on it. Inside was a note. "You've turned this place into something rare, a place that listens. See." And tucked behind the note? A gold coin. An old Navy Challenge coin. Polished to gleam. She held it for a long time, unsure whether to display it or hide it forever. In the end, she placed it on the counter in full view, inside a clear jar labeled, "Honor still lives here." It was nearly dusk when Chuck stepped outside the pharmacy. The Texas sky had gone soft, peach-colored and slow, like a hymn whispered by the wind. Streetlights hadn't flickered on yet, but the shadows stretched long across the parking lot, like memories trying to keep up. He adjusted the paper bag in his hand. 2 bottles inside, 1 blood thinner, 1 joint supplement. Nothing fancy. Just enough to keep the engine running. A voice called out behind him. "Mr. Norris." He turned. It was Danielle, coat off, purse slung over her shoulder, car keys in hand. "You always leave without saying goodbye." Chuck shrugged. "I prefer exits." She smiled, walking up beside him. "Well, I figured if I didn't catch you today, I might not see you again until Thanksgiving. Depends how fast my pills run out." They stood there a moment, side by side, watching a mother load groceries into the trunk of her car with a toddler clinging to her leg. "You know," Danielle said, "the first day you came in here, I was afraid. Thought you were going to report me." Chuck raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "You were quiet." observant. Didn't smile. Chuck sipped the coffee he'd picked up on the way out. I do smile. When? Privately. Danielle laughed. Fair enough. She looked at him more closely. You're not just a patient. Never were. You come in like a scout, checking the territory. Like you're watching over the place. Chuck said nothing. Because he was. 10 minutes later, Chuck drove the long way home, back roads, windows down, same route he took when he needed silence to think clearly. He passed a row of houses with American flags still up from the last holiday. Saw a boy riding a bike too small for him. A dog digging a hole it had no plan to fill. Life. Simple. Messy. Worth protecting. He pulled off the road at a small rise overlooking the pasture. Got out. Sat on the hood. From there, the town was just lights and wind. He took the medicine bag out of the truck and set it beside him. Then he pulled something else from the glove box. A photo. Worn and soft at the edges. His wife. And behind her, the younger version of him. Smile wide. Uniform neat. The beginning of everything. He held the photo quietly. Then folded it again and put it back. The sun dropped below the tree line like a final note. Chuck stood. Dusted off his jeans. And got back in the truck. Days later. A small envelope arrived at the pharmacy. Inside was no name. Just a note, printed on a heavy stock card. Courage isn't loud. It's steady. It shows up, it listens, and it leaves things better than it found them. Taped to the card was a second Navy Challenge coin. This one bore the symbol of a trident wrapped in a laurel. Below it, 4 guardians of the quiet fight. Danielle placed it beside the first coin in the jar. Customers noticed. They didn't always ask. But they always looked. And once a month, at the same time and same hour, a man would arrive, always in boots, always with exact change. He didn't say much. Didn't need to. Because people like Chuck Norris didn't walk into places to be seen. They walked in to make sure others were.